Welcome to Speaking Truth to Power, the series where we meet people from different walks of life who help us understand what it is to speak truth to power. What truth? Whose power? Those are the questions we've been talking about in our previous episodes. Today, it's our pleasure to continue with LT Jayachandran and Anand Pillai as we ask this question: what are we doing with the power that God has given to us as individuals, as a community? LT, don't you think that God has given us this power and we ought to use this power to respond to things around us instead of feeling powerless against this? How do you respond to that?
Now, let me give you my background from the government. And I think this is going to be in stark contrast, at least during my time, from what Anand Pillai has experienced. In the government, if you did not do anything, you will not make any mistakes.
True.
And so you'll get your promotion. But if you did something, then you will get into a problem. So that is a kind of a situation. I'll tell you something very interesting. This was some years ago when I was posted in Shillong, Meghalaya. I was looking after all the 7 states. And we were in Tezu, which is probably the easternmost district of India. Mm-hmm. It's in Arunachal Pradesh. And the Arunachal government had invited some journalists to show them around over the weekend. They were all bored. There was nothing to do. It was a very small place. I took 2 journalists aside. Rajat Sharma was one, who's now running Aaj Tak, one of the channels. And the other one I've forgotten. And I told him this. I said, you guys do a lot of investigative journalism, which is very good. If you take 100 central government officers, 80 of them would be reasonably honest. I'm not saying scrupulously honest, but reasonably honest. But because of your investigative journalism, they don't take any decisions. Because in India, you can send a file in 32 directions if you do not want to take a decision. So they send it to one of these 32 directions. 10% of us are totally corrupt. In spite of all your investigative journalism, they can walk around in broad daylight in Connaught Place. Nobody can do. But the 10% of us invest our honesty in taking tough decisions which another person will not take. Because if he took that tough decision, like I have, for example, recommended accepting a second lowest contractor and so on, people would suspect immediately that
there's something between you and him.
Money. So I said, what is the fourth estate's contribution to the small group of people in the government who are honest and who want to invest their honesty?
And just about 10% of them.
Yeah. See, now that is, you know what Rajesh Sharma said, you should come and speak in our channel and all that. It was many years ago. Maybe I should take him up on that.
You should.
But that is essentially the culture. I think it is now beginning to change in the government because I'm part of a WhatsApp group of us, government officers. Some of our younger people are doing great things. So we are very happy about that. But, and obviously it's also a team again, in which I find one of the differences, I do not know about your corporate understanding. In government, when you are transferred from place A to place B, you did not have any option to choose your team. You had to work with the team which was available. Whereas probably in the private sector, you have some more leeway so that you can have a team which you can work together.
Not always. Yeah. See, there are 2 situations that you can be put into. One is what is known as the project stage, where everything is new. You go there and you do what you have to. That is what we call the change the business model. Or the other one is the production stage, which is run the business.
Correct.
Which is BAU, business as usual, status quo and all that. In that status quo, very rarely will people disturb things. They will go with the existing team and they will go whatever. I mean, they'll do, because their idea is to bring in operational efficiency.
Right.
Whereas in this change the business,
they will
paradigm shift. I mean, Albert Einstein said a significant amount of the problems cannot be solved by the very people who created them. So, if you were to have that same people to think differently, you can't. You will obviously bring in fresh blood, fresh thinking into that. Now, I come back to that other concept that we talked about, that is, where is my power? Now, When I bring in these people, new people, the tendency, the unconscious tendency, in fact, this is known as unconscious bias. I tend to bring in people who are like me, who are gelling with me, and who are
Who I think I could work with.
who I can work with is your word, but that work with is actually submitted to who like me, who are in
Who I can
principle,
gel with.
who are my type of
type.
people. But you superficially say, oh, these are the people I can work with within quotes. I had a situation in one of my earlier corporate assignments where I had to recruit a person for a team. The company said below IITs and below IIMs or tier 1B schools, we cannot take people at this particular level. First of all, I said no, I'm going to make an experiment. And in Delhi, the graduate students in many of the leading colleges like SRCC, LSR, Miranda House or St. Stephen's, I mean, these are powerful, really very good.
Very fine people.
So I said, listen, I'm going to take a person from one of those places. So I violated the HR rule in one sense because I went below the level.
You used your power to do that.
I used my ability to use that power. And I told them, listen, I'm not asked to train people. I'm asked to work with people who can add and contribute. So what I did was I took one of the graduate students who did not have any management orientation and technology orientation, and in that half an hour interview, which actually went on to more than 42 minutes, this candidate, she was arguing, she was debating, she was disagreeing with everything at the interview level. And for her it was what? If I get it, fine. If I don't get it, she came with that attitude, you know. Anyway, this is an experiment that they are doing.
And I'm curious to know if she got it. Let's
Yeah.
listen.
So this thing went on, and the HR person who was sitting next to me, she was very embarrassed that I had got myself into this situation.
position, okay.
Here is a senior vice president getting challenged by a graduate.
Not even a trainee.
Not even a trainee. I mean, just a graduate who's out of college, not been into anything, and she is disagreeing everything. And it was very awkward. So after some time, she went, and the HR person, she said, I'm really sorry, Anand. We told you that these people will not gel. Their thinking is different. They are not at all in our wavelength. And therefore, anyway, we are sorry. But we have got a few management graduates also. We are going to get them into interview. That will be a smoother process. And we'll ask her to go, is what the HR person. I said, no, recruit her. What?
Absolutely.
Recruit her. Because she is disagreeing with everything that I'm saying. She is a vital member in my team. And that got everybody thinking, what is this? I mean, he is going to have problems. I said, yes, I want to have somebody who challenges my view from a point where they have a viewpoint. And ultimately what happened was, this girl, she went on to become the executive assistant of the chief executive. She went out of my team because she was so diverse in her thinking and so out of the box in her thinking that it became a necessary ingredient for our diversity. But here I am bringing that point. So did I misuse my power? The answer is no.
I would certainly say no.
Did I use the power? They did not consider it use of power. They said you are misusing the power. HR has given a rule, HR has given a policy that people of this position must come from only this campuses. But I used my discretion. I said, wait a minute, there is a rule, there is a policy, and there is an interpretation of that policy. And ultimately, after that, what happened, it takes one officer or one executive to give a new interpretation, and then it will be legitimized. So what happened was, afterward, they legitimized, they revised the policy. But let us take, if you go by LT's example, nobody in my position in the government setup would have, done this. They would have stuck to the rule. This is what I would call the old Woodward's Gripewater ad, I mean,
do the same thing.
Do the same thing for generations, and what will you get? Nothing.
One of the things I did was to treat people with dignity, so that even very ordinary, average people, when they were working in my team, they did something marvelous. In fact, I remember one of my colleagues asking, what jadoo did you do on such and such a fellow? I said, I treated him as a person made in the image of God. I think one of the things to draw out the best even from a very average person is to begin to, and that's also a way of using your power.
Absolutely.
Because you are
respect the person's
able to draw
individuality.
the best by treating a person with dignity. Yeah, I think that is something.
And I want to take on what the LT talked about, treating with dignity. I recently, bought an apartment. Actually, I booked that apartment in 2009 and finally got delivery of that apartment in 2017. But it came to us in an unfinished form, because the builder went into his own problem like most builders and all that. Long story short, what happened, many of us, we were struggling to get our apartment completed with the mason work, with the plumbing and whatever. Many of my colleagues who were in greater, within quotes, position of power, they were commanding, they were throwing all over the place, and the same words were used for me. Anand, your apartment is getting finished. What jadoo did you do? What did you do? I basically did three things. First one, and you put a nice term to it, gave dignity to them. What I did was I called people by name. I didn't say, hey, painter idhar aao, hey, plumber idhar aao. I called Ramu, Aja.
Instead of calling them names, Harshit, you call them by name.
I called them by name, right? The other people called them by profession, driver, mason, painter, So the moment I called people by name, they got a little bit excited.
There was something personal about it.
There was something called them by name. The second thing that I did was, whenever I could get physical, I would, for example, shake hand for them. I would say, come. The moment I touch them and bring them along, they felt a little bit, wow, boss is with us, And it was really a liberating truth for them to find out that I am not having a class. In fact, word went around, do you know who he is, whose apartment you are doing? I mean, he is a big shot, But I never acted like that. I would be very close with them. But the differentiator, or the one that really broke the magic into that entire relationship was, I would have a meal or a coffee or a snack with them. And there's mud all over the place. There is, it's a mess, as you would have seen an apartment in construction. So I would get some food for them. Okay. And it was an hidden benefit for me, because the moment I got them to have food here, they would not go for they would not go out for a 1 hour lunch break. True. It would be a half an hour lunch break, and in the process what I would do is I would turn over a broken stool or put some bricks together and sit. You'll have to imagine a place in construction. In that I would sit there and I would eat that samosa, or I would eat whatever that snack, and this is very biblical. If you actually see, the closeness of the relationship that God gives us is in Revelation chapter 3 verse 20. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hears my voice and opens the door, I will sup with him, or I will have fellowship with him. So in the Jewish tradition, and even in our tradition, when do we say a person is close to us? When we have a meal with them. And in fact, in Psalm 55, he actually goes on to say, if a stranger passed that remark, it would have been okay. But if some unknown person, if he said this, it is okay. But somebody who supped with me, somebody who supped with me. So it is both a positive as well as a negative. So in using power, in building relationships, in bringing that corporate nature, I learned these three things. The people who work with you, call them by name. And the God who I worship, he calls me by name. He says, even if your mother forgets you, will a mother forget you? Is asking. Even if she forgets you, no, I will not forget you. I have engraved your name on the palm of my hand. That is the God that I worship. I am personal for him. If I am so personal, should people not also be personal? If my God is having the joy in having a meal with me, should I not extend that same thing to others? That is what brings. And if my God is physical, if my God embraces me, if my God touches me, will I not be in the same position?
Isn't that a beautiful thought? Now, you stayed with us so far. On one side, you saw LT saying 10% of the people of a particular type, one person who stood out. Wouldn't you want to be that one person, that part of the 10%? And wouldn't you want that 10% to be the whole community? That's what all this is about. Speaking truth to power, bringing perspectives, building the way the kingdom is to be built. Thank you for staying with us today. We'll meet next time. We're in conversation with Anand Pillai and LT Jayachandran. Thank you for joining us, and see you soon.